held a school record for 29 years, swam Division I for Michigan State University, coached an underfunded swim team from just 5 guys to winning 4 conference championships in a row from 2021 to 2024. She helped their parents found International Sports Timing, the first digital scoreboard company for swim meets. And these accomplishments, they're just scratching the surface of Coach Eve Julian's resume. Coach Eve was my coach, my leader, all 4 years of my high school swimming career. And these were the 4 years that Ottawa was led to 4 straight conference championships. And I believe that Coach Eve was entirely responsible for that. Specifically, there are 4 leadership principles that I believe are responsible for Ottawa's drastic success. And not only in the traditional sense of conference championships, but in the sense of creating a spectacular culture. 1. Inclusivity. Accepting and developing all athletes, fostering belonging, and nobody is cut out. 2. Connection. Relationships between coach and athlete, knowing lives, personalities, and motivations. 3. Team identity. High standards, traditions, passion from everyone, storytelling, and so much more. And 4th, and finally, developing leaders. Creating layers of leadership, captain mentorships, athletes lead athletes. However, I chose Coach Eve not only because I believe she is an excellent coach, but for the influence she has had on who I am becoming. I'm studying to become a teacher, but I have aspirations so much greater than staying in a classroom my entire life. Coach Eve studied education in college. She taught for a few years while coaching and then moved on to other things, working for her parents' company now as the VP of Sales and Support at IST. And she moved up in the swimming and coaching world as now being the secretary and webmaster of NISCA, the National Interscholastic Swim Coaches Association. Her life overall serves as an example for a path that I could follow. Seeing her continually grow, take on new challenges, and develop her leadership beyond a single role has inspired me to envision a future where I can do the same. She has encouraged me to lean into my strengths, think bigger about my career, and believe that I don't have to limit myself to one identity or profession. Coach Eve's mentorship has shaped not just my ambitions, but my confidence. She makes me feel capable of becoming a leader who can impact others the way she impacted me. To allow you, the viewer, to fully grasp the effects of Eve's leadership, we're going to go through my entire senior swim season from my perspective, starting all the way at the end of my junior season when I was elected to be a captain. So, without further ado, let's jump into it. It all started with the captain elections at the practice following conference championships. I had always thought it would be cool to be a leader, and one of the captains that I was very close with my junior year, Zeke, encouraged me to apply to be a captain a lot. He was always encouraging me. Coach Eve put forth a very intentional and drawn out process of becoming a captain due to, in her words,
terrible captains.
in the past. For me, this process started with an interview I had to set up with Coach where she asked me a variety of questions.
Why do you want to be a captain? What is the role of a captain on our team? What would your strengths and weaknesses be? Who would you be a good captain with? One of my favorites is, without throwing anybody under the bus, tell me about something that happened this year that you would have handled differently if you had been a captain. I love that one because it really tells me whether they've been thinking about the team and like how people are treating each other, because that's kind of the job of the captain, is to make sure that everybody's treating each other good.
This process is really quite representative of how intentionally Coach Eve develops leaders on her team. And that is her first leadership principle, developing leaders. Anyways, at this first practice following conference meet, the team voted on 3 captains. And long story short, I was chosen as one of the three captains. Honestly, I was a bit surprised at first because I'd been a pretty quiet member of the team up until my junior year. My freshman year was coming off of COVID, so me and all the other freshmen were really quiet, and I would say the captains that year did a very subpar job of really getting us involved in the team and getting us vulnerable. I mean, I really did not feel like I could be vulnerable at all with the people on the team at the time. I was scared of them. Even though I was around juniors and seniors all the time, being placed in the third most difficult lane, I felt isolated. I was only with my buddy Ryan, and these memories were kind of still somewhat fresh in my mind when I applied to become a captain. So, one of the things I wanted to focus on was a team where everyone was friends with each other and fostering an environment where people felt free to be themselves. However, at this point, I really didn't have the best idea of how to go about creating this team that I dreamed of. So, the next stage of my leadership development occurred at knowledge transfer. This was an event Coach Eve hosted at her house every spring.
I take the outgoing captains and the incoming captains and have them sit down, and I just ask them what went well, what didn't go well, what did you learn this year, and then they get to talk and kind of dump on the new captains so that the new guys coming in can learn from past mistakes or past successes.
Over that summer, me and my co captains, Drew and Caleb, felt really inspired to start having more team bonding events because the captains before us stated at Knowledge Transfer that they really wished they'd done more of that. So we decided to have a beach day at the beginning of the summer and a team sleepover towards the end of the summer. And then to complement our practice leading in the fall, Coach Eve invited all of us over to her house about once a week to start reading this book called The Team Captain's Leadership Manual. That's by Jeff Jansen. In her words, this is so the captains can learn how the sausage is made.
They get to hear some of the behind the scenes. I had to make this decision. This is what went into it, so that they understand that it's not just a, snap judgment and anger kind of thing.
Finally, we started up captain's practices, and about a month before the season started, these were completely captain led, and they were a great opportunity for us to sort of practice these leadership principles that we had been learning about with Coach. We would practice like organizing sets, motivating swimmers, setting the tone and energy, and overall just like adapting and making decisions on the fly. That 8 month stretch from interview to voting to mentorship to readings to hands on learning was all intentionally designed by Coach Eve in order to develop our leadership and give us practice. One aspect of my leadership that I feel I was significantly developing during this time was my ability to harness the heliotropic effect, defined by Harry Cohen as the natural tendency of living things to move toward positive, life sustaining energy. A chapter of the team captain's leadership manual really focused on team atmosphere and emphasizing the importance of like captains and determining it. So after reading that chapter, obviously I was very inspired to sort of evolve my approach in that manner. One of the things they really talked about was captains being able to like put away all the troubles from your lives as you go into practice, and just being able to sort of focus and lead the team without all of the burdens from your life. Overall, I think the captain's practices were the test here. Could we, as the captains, coach and lead the team to bring on the proper energy without a coach? And I would say the answer was yes. I think they were very successful. Another thing Coach Eve was doing here was developing her layers of leadership, an idea also discussed by John Bacon in chapter 11 of Let Them Lead. On his team, there's only one captain, so for him, his top layer of leadership looks a little bit different. Um, it's the one captain, but then also having like a strong supporting senior class. For Coach Eve, this was a little different because we had three captains, and I would say a lot of her focus was on these three captains. That was really our top layer of leadership under her. Um, it's hard to say which of these approaches works better, but I would say both of these coaches could learn something from another. Another thing they both agree on is the importance of having the leadership at all different levels of the team. I mean, Bacon's team had such great leadership at all levels that they were able to go an entire game without him as the leadership. Um, Going back to Coach Eve, she basically ran the captain's practices like this. They both threw their leaders into situations where they needed to adapt and be able to organize the team in a way where they didn't have someone else directing them. Overall, it was hard as a captain running these practices, but I think that it was a great experience and it prepared me really well for if we ever needed to take a more prominent role in leading a practice or meet later in the season. And it's nice that by the beginning of the season, Coach Eve had already sort of developed her top level of leadership on the team. All leaders need support, and while Eve was setting up these layers of leadership within the team itself and within its athletes, she was also setting up this really supportive system of parent volunteers. There would be support for the team. She hosted a mandatory parent and athlete meeting during the final week of preseason practices. Basically, parents went into one room, all the athletes went to the other. The captains, we led some team bonding activities. Well, in the parent room, Coach Eve was drilling into the parents this culture of supporting Ottawa and how it had been like this for a while. At the end of it, parents signed up to bring a meal after every meet, to run concessions, to manage ticketing. Others took on like more prominent booster roles, like there was a president, a secretary, a treasurer. Overall, this sort of system of creating an organization around a team really reminded me of Sean Bourmet's job as a CEO coach. He recognized that coaching needs to be more than just coaching athletes and instead should involve building support systems, building entire organizations around these teams that allow them to really sustainably succeed. I think a lot of coaches struggle and are very shorthand or close-minded and like are only focusing on their athletes, where you really need to have this more broad view of what is everything I can do to help this team succeed. Open-mindedness. It's Monday, the week of Thanksgiving. Captain's practices have come to an end and the season officially starts today. We went to practice for the full 2 hours but did not step in the water a single time. You know why? Because Coach Eve sat us down and talked to us about the standards of the team for 2 hours. Her biggest, historically and presently, standard is attendance. And if you weren't meeting that standard, your time was limited.
The way I built my team was by kicking people off of it. That was all of a sudden when suddenly now we're a serious team. Well, oh, like you can't just walk in with a slushy 15 minutes late and that's okay. People want to feel like they're doing something, achieving something, or working towards something, right? There needs to be some purpose. And if you can just kind of loosey goosey it, then nobody really wants to do that.
I think a coach that also recognizes the impact of setting high standards, especially right away, is John Bacon. I mean, in chapter 2 of Let Them Lead, he says, set high standards up front. And in chapter 4, don't apologize for high expectations, celebrate them. Bacon is emphasizing that you shouldn't give your team half truths. Tell them exactly what you expect of them at first and hold them accountable for that. If they can't follow the standards, then they need to leave, either willingly or sometimes forcibly. Exactly what Coach Eve learned throughout her tenure. The type of people you attract with these standards are also the type of people that you want on your team. These are the people that are going to strive for greatness. And because they are putting up with your standards, they're proving to you as the coach that they believe that they can achieve greatness and will buy into your model. Another notable thing Coach Eve brought up was the professionality Ottawa brings on meet days. First, we wear church clothes to school, and secondly, we treat the other team with the utmost kindness and respect. From the first day, Coach Eve begins to build a team identity, another one of her leadership principles. Right now, this identity is shaped by the high standards defined by Coach, specifically that every athlete is going to show up every day to work and that we are going to be respectful to competition. Um, let's add those to the team's identity core values board. Additionally, our identity is shaped by respect and love to our teammates. This was built in preseason. The second day, we delayed getting in the water even more to have a captain led activity where we drew up a team contract. We made sure to take input from everyone on the team for additional standards to set that Coach Eve didn't already cover and to cover some goals for the season. Our goals were winning the conference title and developing a good culture. Finally, we got in the water. For me, this was an opportunity to flex all of the work I had put in during the off-season swimming club. But overall, for everyone else, the first week of practice was more about conditioning and, especially for the newbies, getting used to the way we run practice. The second week is where all the fun began. On Friday, we were having our black and orange meet, an inter-squad competition. On Thursday, me and the other captains and the coaches met to split up teams for it. We split up these teams fairly and then announced them at the end of practice in order to not have too much time for individual identities of these teams to form. And then overall, the next day, the meet was a blast. My team lost, but it reminded everyone of the thrill of having to race again. Plus, we got a super fun talent show afterwards. This was Coach Eve's idea. And this gets to another Coach Eve leadership principle, inclusivity. One of Eve's greatest priorities was making everyone feel like they belong. Even after we were split up for black and orange, everyone came together at the end to celebrate the meet. Additionally, the talent show afterwards was a great opportunity for everyone to get vulnerable, and it really demonstrated to everyone that when they show their true selves, they will get rewarded for it. This really fostered a great sense of belonging and togetherness in the team. I don't actually remember what I did for the talent show my senior year, but I'll give like a little story from my junior year. So basically, I didn't know what the vibes were going to be like for this talent show. I really hadn't like opened up fully to the team yet. So I decided to learn this like card trick, super basic thing. I had been like practicing it all day because I didn't want to embarrass myself in front of the team. I wanted to maintain this like air of like confidence and coolness. So basically, everything's good. I get up there to perform this card trick and I totally mess it up. I like completely forget how to do it. I like dropped. So it's one of those ones where it's like you reveal a card at the end and everyone's like, whoa. I literally dropped the card that I was supposed to reveal before the end, and everyone saw it on the ground and was like, bruh. So I picked the card up, put it at the bottom of the deck. I keep like messing around with the trick, and then at the end, I'm just like, I'll just pull it out anyways. I pull it out from the bottom, and everyone goes crazy. The crowd is loving it. They're like, you would have thought I just performed some like actually insane magic. But I think what this truly taught me is that even when I mess up, the team still loves me unconditionally. And there was really no point in me stressing out all day about this. again, this event was just a brilliant move by Coach Eve because everybody had to get vulnerable and embarrassing. I mean, there were some really embarrassing acts, and that is just the number one thing you can do to foster togetherness for a team right at the beginning of the season, especially. In the week following Black and Orange, we had our first dual meet against Mona Shores. And before this meet, Coach Eve paired everyone up with a meet buddy. So this year we had a huge class of first years. Like I think it was over 15. The first years were almost outnumbering the second years. So it worked out really well with Meet Buddies where we had a first year of any grade with a second year of any grade. This is another way in which Coach Eve and John Bacon as well really layered leadership in their teams. Um, if you got a younger guy paired, like a freshman paired with like a sophomore, I mean, that's really going to give this sophomore who, during the vast majority of the time, really can't step up to be a leader because of pressure from juniors and seniors. That's not entirely true, but a lot of sophomores will feel that way. But this gives sophomores that sort of outlet to be a leader and to practice their leadership with people younger than them in sort of an enclosed setting. Overall, though, both Bacon and Coach Eve emphasize the fact that anyone on the team can be a leader, and it's hard to know who will step up when called. Another method that Coach Eve specifically employed to develop leaders is instructing her captains to be servant leaders.
Servant leadership is I'm a senior captain and I grab two freshmen and I say, hey, can you help me get the pool set up? Because this is what needs done right now. So you're in there with them. You're doing the things with them. And I think it's important for people who are being led to see you working with them, right? Like I try not to sit down during a swim practice, and I don't even know if you guys notice, but I'm constantly walking the pool, and watching and doing the stuff, but I don't sit down because if you guys are working, I should be working too.
Mentorship roles give older teammates without a title practice for being leaders and even can prepare some for being a future captain. Overall, modeling is critical for introducing leadership to younger athletes. And for a lot of them, freshmen, sophomores in high school, they're really going to need that encouragement to go out there and be a leader. Modeling overall really helps build that bridge between putting yourself out there as a leader. Additionally, this idea of servant leadership is not only reminiscent of developing layers of leadership in your team, but I think also relates to Coach Biff Poggi's philosophy of service and love. Servant leaders serve their people by prioritizing their people's growth instead of uplifting their own status. They are empowering others instead of controlling them. To have this approach, Biff emphasizes that we need to love our teammates. You have to want the best for them and their future as potential leaders. And this type of leadership was honestly really hard for me at first. I have always enjoyed helping and leading others, but there is a selfish part of me that just does that for the attention it brings to me. And servant leadership really flipped that whole idea on me completely. I am here to serve my people and inspire them to hopefully be even greater than me in the future. And it took me such a long time to understand this idea, but once I did, I felt so free. If I love the people that can replace me, I can never be jealous of them. I can channel my desire for success and attention into a desire for others to succeed. Yeah. Anyways, back to the story. This dual meet was a massive win. Mona Shores' team is way smaller than ours, way slower, and we were on to the next. The following week, we had another relatively easy meet against Fremont, another small and relatively slow team. And then our first invitational on the weekend, and we were hosting it. It was the annual City Sprints Invitational. This meet is a lot of fun, and it was a lot of fun, even though we ended up placing third. We started a new tradition before the meet where people would write their goals on a note card and or a sticky note, and we would like stick them all to this like poster on the wall. Um, so even though we got last in the meet, we had some certain relay wins that were really exciting, as well as a lot of people completing their goals that they wrote on these note cards. So really, these goals on these note cards was a way to keep us humble and keep us moving forward even when we failed. Another way the team builds pride is through celebration of ourselves at our schools. Coach Eve would send out a report after each meet to every school that has a swimmer on Ottawa. The report would be added to the school's morning announcements and like detail the team's placing in a meet. For example, for city sprints at my school, City High, the announcement stated, "Congratulations to the Ottawa Hills boys swim and dive team for placing third at the City Sprints Invitational. Individual event winners were blah 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 blah." I think through this method, all swimmers at Ottawa gain pride for their team, even if you're not hearing yourself on the announcements. It's sort of creating this like shared pride for your team's success, and also it increases your team's notoriety and like aura around everyone else. Overall, these practices, the sticky notes, the celebratory announcements, both built a very prideful identity for the Ottawa Hills boys swim and dive team. At this point, everyone was so proud of the work we had put in throughout the year and all the work that was getting celebrated to our communities outside of the team. And it really began to mean something to be a part of the OHHS swim team. This was our team identity. By now, we had developed a feeling that everyone belongs on the team through team bonding, like the talent show after Black and Orange. And we also developed a sense of team pride through completing our goals and sticking to our standards even through losses. The next meet would be our final meet before winter break training began. It was exam week at school. Everybody was sleep deprived, busy, stressed out, and we had to drive 2 hours to a meet on the Thursday evening up in Manistee. Spirits were not high, and Coach knew this, so her traditionally strict attitude before dual meets was lifted slightly, as she understood what everyone was going through. And overall, that really brings up another principle of Coach Eve's leadership: connection. She was able to connect with me and everyone else on the team as a coach, and therefore gain a greater understanding of us as people. According to Bacon, great leaders always know their people, which highlights the need for a leader to be connected to and understand her people. Coach Eve had been connected to everyone on the team at some level this whole year. Whenever there was a bit of time before practice, or whenever she would be intentional about asking people about themselves.
I think a lot of coaches forget that these swimmers on your team, they're not just swimmers. They are musicians and artists and writers and mathematicians and creators of all kinds of things. And so, getting to know their interests outside of swimming, I think is very helpful. I had a kid one time that was really into MMA. And we were doing R1Ts, which, halfway through you feel like you're going to die. And he was laying on the deck and he's like, I can't do it. I can't do it. And I leaned down and I yelled at him, get up off the mat. You are not done. And he got up and he finished him. I can't do that with everybody, but because I knew he was into MMA, I knew that would trigger something for him.
So, going back to the example of this meet, because Coach Eve knew everyone on the team as a student, as that was part of their identity, and this was finals week, she was going to treat us differently with more patience and more calmness. Another method aside from daily interaction that Coach employed to get to know us, she did on this bus ride to Manistee, and that was one-on-one goal meetings. So basically, on the entire ride up there, Coach Eve was calling up people one by one up to like her seat at the front of the bus, and she would basically meet with them for about 5 minutes, ask what was going on in their life. and what their goals were for the rest of the season. And this little effort, I feel like, allowed her to get a much deeper understanding of us as people and how to motivate us as athletes. Like how she could do with the swimmer that she knew liked MMA that she was talking about earlier. This bit, especially about motivation, is what Bacon is especially highlighting in chapter 7 of Let Them Lead. He states, "You can't motivate people you don't know." What I really like about Bacon's perspective on this, that maybe Coach Eve is lacking a little bit, is about being vulnerable as a coach, too. It's important for you to be vulnerable, not just your athletes, as this helps them to understand you, understand your values, your mission, your plan for them, and that just gives them more confidence in buying into you. Bacon did this a lot in one-on-one meetings, and also he was just so good about asking feedback. I think Coach Eve could be slightly better about asking feedback throughout the season. But both Bacon and Eve really excelled at telling stories to be vulnerable. Stories about their failures, story about the team's failures, and just the past. Another thing that both coaches did really well was opening themselves up as a mentor for athletes to vent about tough situations in their lives. Both of these coaches' doors was always open to their office. Anyways, back to the Manistee bus ride. Even though everyone was exhausted before the meet had even started, they were still in good spirits because everyone had peace that Coach knew what they were going through. So for me, I was putting a little bit more emphasis on this meet. My spirits were probably a little bit down, just like everyone else's, but I was going for the Miska cut in the 100 butterfly. Miska is basically like a mid-season state meet, and to align with my goals, I really needed to get this Miska cut to be on track to getting the eventual state cut, which was my final goal. So I told this to coach in my one-on-one meeting, and she was there for me the entire time and offered a lot of support. So, anyways, we finally get to this meet. We warm up, and the beginning of my race schedule was very underwhelming. Our 200 medley relay missed the Miska cut by like under a second. It was so close. Um, I hopped into the warm up pool the second the 50 free was over because there's a little break halfway through the meet. I warmed up quickly and I got out to sit behind the blocks to mentally prepare myself for this race. And because Coach Eve had talked to me earlier, and because she knows me as an athlete, she knows her people. It's very good. She knows that I get very stressed before races. So she came over to me, calmed me down a little bit, and relaxed me, and just allowed me to have a significantly better swim. I began the race very quickly, only taking one breath in the first 25. I kept up this pace mainly through the first 75, but did eventually slow down. I wasn't sure if I was going to get the time of 58.59, but I got it easily. I blasted a 57.2, and I believe that this experience was when I realized the significance of having a leader that knows me so well. Who knows if I would have gotten that cut if Coach hadn't calmed me down before the race. On the bus ride home, I actually do remember reflecting about this, and I realized that I couldn't just be a jolly and like encouraging leader and captain on the team. I also really had to learn to like know people and learn their social cues, learn when they needed a little bit of motivation, maybe when they needed a little like stepping away on my part. So I kind of learned what Coach Eve already knew, and that is to know my people. So I got my Michigan cut. We beat Manistee, drove home. All my exams were good. Life was good, except now it was time for winter practices. This part of the season is incredibly difficult. We have 3 hour practices 6 days a week. We have hard dry land for the first hour, and then a 5 to 6 thousand yard set afterwards. And on top of that, this whole 2 week stretch started out with the hardest set of the year, the 12 days of Christmas. A nearly 10,000 yard 3 hour set with a huge variety of like kicking, pulling, IM. It was just not a fun time at all. and was really never easy under any year of my swim career. It was around this time that I noticed the newbies really realizing that hard work is another one of Coach Eve's high standards. You could not bullshit your way through these workouts. You had to be intentional and work hard. But afterwards, you were rewarded with food. Parents signed up to bring food after every practice. It was different parents each day. And this was yet another system of support that Coach Eve had set up for the team's success. At this point in the season, as an athlete, I was really starting to appreciate these support systems. With them in place, I felt like I was being rewarded for coming to practice, and that my coaches and to some extent my fans felt for me and really wanted to see me succeed. And I say fans and just like the people who are supporting me. And this introduces another idea from Sean Bourmet's systems of coaching. The athletes perform best when they feel seen, valued, and emotionally supported by their community. This is also about the point in the season where if you're on the team, you're likely going to stay on it as practices are getting super hard when all of your friends are on break, sleeping in, and you got to wake up early to go to practice. It's terrible. Everyone on the team realized that it was special. Why? Because it was hard. Bacon states this in chapter 1. Make it special by making it hard. And then, especially his part about celebrating expectations, discussed in chapter 4. I think this is really a part of that special aspect of a hard team. The meals parents cooked for us after every winter break practice is the perfect example of celebrating expectations. And the food was really just the beginning of how Coach Eve celebrated us during these grueling weeks of training. A growing tradition that the captains had started was Secret Santa among the athletes, which is always a lot of fun. Another thing was the New Year's practice, which was just, we were still in the water, but it was just a bunch of games. Lastly, towards the end of break, Ottawa hosted an alumni meet for alumni to come back and race. And this was the funnest thing ever. I got to race against a bunch of guys who had already graduated, and they were out of shape, and I was in shape, and I beat them, and it was like, whoa, this guy's on the record board, and I beat him. That was just so cool, though. And really, these events and activities were great for morale, and again, were rewards for or celebrations for the team's hard work. All right, let's pull up this identity board again. So far, we have everybody shows up, professionalism, love and respect, hardworking, belonging, pride. I think we should add dedication to reward everyone on the team for sticking up to it at this point. And then also to celebration, or adding celebration to reflect all the fun traditions during this time of year. This next part of the season was the real grind. No more holiday spirit to keep the energy exciting. No more meals after practice, and no sight and end for the school year. Motivation was hard to find, but this is the time of year where Coach begins to buckle down on Ottawa's identity through storytelling, specifically around our rival meet against Wayland.
The story is what motivates people, right? I don't do great motivational speeches. I'm actually pretty terrible at them, but I can tell a story that can connect you to why we're doing and what we're doing and who we're doing it for, all the way back to, kids from 15 years ago. Wayland wasn't a rivalry until we got close. And then I was like, you know what? I'm real tired of losing to these guys. This needs to be. And so then there was a couple of years where we were really intentional about we were going to be Wayland. And that just sort of snowballed into now we have a rivalry. If you've got a shared history, it's easier to connect with people. And so I can pull in stories about, teams past and the things that they've done or the accomplishments that they've made and how that's going to help this year's team or how you guys are going to help next year's team or whatever it is. But having those shared stories, I think, gives you a better sense of community.
Like Coach Eve is hinting at here, storytelling is not only able to foster motivation, but it can also be a driving force for a team or company's culture. Rustin Dodd states in Luca, Jimmy Butler, and the Culture Question, what so many leaders underestimate, that one of the best ways to create culture is through storytelling. When a company has a story it can tell about itself, it can drop it in front, giving it a map to follow. The story for Ottawa is that of an underdog school in an underfunded school district versus the rich suburban school, Wayland. We are the underdogs, and everybody roots for the underdogs. The history of this rivalry is failure, but we have the chance to upset that. Coach Eve really highlights this story by describing many many Wayland swimmers are swimming year round, which is just not an option for a lot of people on our team, and that builds some resentment right there. And then additionally, she has this story about one year where Wayland's coach Seth, before the meet, took a look at our lineup, sort of copied parts of it. Um, she calculated what the score was going to be. He saw that he was going to lose, so he changed some stuff, and they ended up winning that year. And that was like the closest year Ottawa had gotten to beating Wayland in a while. I don't know if that's true or not, but these are just the things that Coach Eve brings into the storytelling. The villainization of Wayland puts us as not only the underdog, but the hero, further elevating our team's desire for victory. Overall, the underdog mentality becomes a crucial part of Ottawa's identity and culture. Every meet leading up to Wayland were all big successes, excluding the Loy Norix invite, where Ottawa placed last. This meet had a lot of good teams, including the two that we lost to earlier in the season in city sprints. And I personally was not thinking that much about personal goals at the moment, and I was really focused on our rivalry meet, like everyone else was at the team. They didn't care about their times or our performance at Loy Norix. It was all about Wayland. Looking back, I'm honestly surprised I didn't care more about my times at Loy Norix because really they kind of signaled that I was not on pace to meet my goal and I was not going to get this state cut. I think this was when I started to really understand the difference between self focused leadership and team focused leadership. Earlier in the season and my swim career in general, my first priority was my own performance, the desire to prove myself. But during this part of the season, I felt myself shift. I wasn't worried about my own times or my own recognition. I was absorbed in something bigger, our collective identity, our collective mission. And leading from that place, from a genuine investment in our group rather than myself, made me a calmer competitor, a more grounded teammate, and a better servant leader. That was just focused on Wayland too, not Loy Norix. This shift in mindset, I think, made a huge difference going into the Wayland meet because I wasn't really racing for myself. I was kind of racing for my teammates. And that definitely showed as we dusted Wayland by more than 10 points, a resounding victory for the underdogs. And I had some great performances that meet too. Following the Wayland meet, our story shifted to repeating our conference championship. For my grade, this would be an incredibly significant moment, with Ottawa potentially winning the conference title every single year we were on the team. I was really excited, but Union and Wayland were still contenders. We had both those dual meets won by about 10 points. A resounding victory in a dual meet, but in a conference setting, really anything can go. At least this was the narrative that Coach Eve was pushing forward, in alignment with our identity as the underdogs. We also got to partake in a fun team tradition called Revolt. This is basically a real revolt against Coach Eve, led by the captains. We basically picked a random Friday with no meet on the Saturday after. We delegated someone to steal Coach's keys, someone to steal her phone. Then we pretended like we were going to practice like normal, but Drew, my co captain, yelled revolt right before we jumped in the water. Everyone ran over to Coach, and we picked her up and threw her in the diving well, and then had a sleepover at Drew's house. This is such a fun tradition that goes on every year and once again demonstrated sort of the importance of celebrating your people's hard work. This week after Revolt, me and the rest of the Miska team participated in the meet that following Saturday. And it was pretty underwhelming because a lot of us were sick. We went slower in the relays. But for me specifically, Coach E sort of helped me reframe my failure into motivation for training for conference meet. A crucial aspect of Coach Eve's inclusive atmosphere on the team that I've really failed to mention as of now is watering all your plants. This is an idea discussed by Bacon in chapter 6 of Let Them Lead. And it's basically that you need to water all your plants equally and watch who grows. He states that talent is not constant and you don't know the potential you're missing out on until you give everyone a chance. The metaphor is obviously to athletes, athletes to plants, plants to athletes, and that an athlete's performance is impossible to predict so that everyone needs to be focused on equally. Coach Eve is definitely in agreement with this, but she also expands that this idea is crucial for team culture and identity as well.
But I think it's important for team morale and camaraderie for everybody to feel like they're, just as important as the next guy. I think it's really hard for someone to buy into this, work hard and support your teammates if you're not getting the same kind of attention that your teammates are getting. And it very much does affect the rest of the team and the team culture because the other kids kind of feel like, well, nobody really cares about me. So it doesn't matter if I don't show up to practice or it doesn't matter if I don't work hard.
The idea of not watering your plants is completely unfair in the context of performance, but it is also completely failing the lower performers on your team. I think watering all your plants is also important in the context of leadership. Many leaders tend to really pick out favorites that could potentially be great leaders in the future, but oftentimes overlook people that just need a little bit more of a push or maybe a bit more modeling. I think servant leadership from Coach Eve really was pivotal towards pushing me up as a leader, and especially her imposing servant leadership upon previous captains and years. I think another important part of servant leadership is literally just serving your people, like Biff Poggi highlights. He states that if you're not serving everyone down to the last or lowest person in your organization, you will fail. And I would like to add a bit on the end there and say that they will fail, your organization, but also we will fail because you're a part of the organization. Everybody fails if you're not watering all your plants. You need to be serving everyone. And this is the last principle that we will be adding to the team's identity sheet. We're going to go with equality, treating everyone equally. Every person, every member of the team, every non member of the team, talented, untalented, everyone is treated equally. We began Hell Week 3 weeks out from conferences. The sets during Hell Week are incredibly difficult, especially because you're completing them with tights on and during like when you're going to school, which is different than the winter practices. And also, yes, you heard that right. We literally wear leggings in the pool. The purpose of that is to have extra drag when you're swimming so that when you take them off after Hell Week, you'll be moving incredibly quickly in the water. Um, Hell Week is followed by taper, where our yardage continually drops at every practice. We also take the tights off about a week or a week and a half out from conferences. And that Saturday before conference, we partook in another super fun Ottawa tradition, bleaching. We got over half the team to bleach their hair my senior year. The week kept going by. The team energy increased more and more the closer we got to conferences, as we were doing less and less yardage while becoming more and more nervous. But finally, it was the day before conferences. Our practice was only 500 yards. Then everyone headed into the room to shave their bodies in the showers. We all did it together. That was another bonding experience. And then many, including me, shaved our heads, which is another bonding experience. And definitely that with the bleaching is a part of Ottawa's cultural identity. Now it was the morning of conference prelims. We met at Drew's house. The parents cooked us up one last meal. We watched Pride, an inspiring movie about an even more disadvantaged swim team than us. And then we carpooled to Ottawa. We boarded a bus and headed to Byron Center. I was incredibly nervous. My whole season was building up to this moment where I could possibly get this 100 butterfly individual state cut, maybe some relay cuts as well. And most importantly, kind of, a fourth conference title to complete my 4 years on the team. However, differently from other instances where I was incredibly nervous in the past, I try to keep my focus on the team here and doing the best that I could for them, really focusing on that conference victory and not my individual state cut. I was there to serve my team and my people. I think framing my mindset as putting the team first, even if that did mean to some extent doing good in my races. So, I mean, a little bit hypocritical of me saying that, but this was calming. Unfortunately, by the end of prelims, I missed my individual state cut, and we hadn't earned any relay cuts either. As a swimmer, there's always this fear that you won't go faster in finals, and honestly, that fear was consuming me Friday evening. I found it very hard to relax before day two. And then, predictably, day two came, and I missed my 100 fly cut again. My biggest goal of the season, the one that I had been chasing all of these years. It was hard to keep thinking about the team when my own ambition felt so out of reach. But then came the final three relays. I had nothing to lose. My personal goals were behind me, and I could just swim for the team. And that's exactly what happened. With that mindset and some incredible races for my teammates, we got the state cut in the 200 free relay, placing third, and the state cut in the 4 free relay, placing first in our conference meet. And this was a perfect way to end the meet, a first place finish, which led to the team's fourth straight conference championship. At this point, I don't even remember being sad about missing the 100 fly cut. I was more sad about not being able to see my teammates anymore, and the season was ending. But ignore that for now. We won. We raced in our cars to Fujiyama Buffet. We feasted. Then we went to Drew's house for the annual post-conference sleepover. We had that. The weekend went by very quickly and sadly, and then I found myself on Monday at practice again, a year later from when I was elected captain. This was 4 incredible years spent together with my teammates, my second family. I grew so much as an athlete and a leader. And well, it was almost time to leave. One thing was for certain. This year we were going to states. This was my most enjoyable and transformative swim season yet. Being a leader and also a high performer on the team catapulted me into a highly important and stressful position where I had to constantly learn and adapt. It also allowed me to understand what my leadership style was, a relationship and energy driver. When the season started, I had no idea what it looked like to actually be a leader. But through Coach Eve's captain development system and my experience throughout the season, I then came to understand what the role of a leader was on Ottawa and how I could fit into that framework. Among the captains, I was always the happiest, so it was easy for me to lead aspects of the team regarding energy and atmosphere. At the beginning of every practice, I learned to put aside any frustrations from throughout the day and be the sun, not the salt, for my people. I needed to do this because I learned to know my people. Everyone on the team struggled during the day at school or with. I needed to do this because I learned to know my people. Everyone on the team struggled during the day at school or with their family in the evening or with something else. And many really needed swim practice as an escape. Why did I do this for them? Because it was my responsibility as a leader. Because I learned to love and to serve my team. I wanted the absolute best for them and was so proud and happy when they succeeded. It wasn't about me anymore, it was about the team. Harry Cohen, Bacon, and Biff would be proud. I am so proud of myself and my progress as a leader, as well as my team's success. We not only won 4 straight conference titles in a row, we fostered a spectacular culture and identity with strong values year after year. Especially from my freshman year to my senior year, how the culture improved was so powerful. How did we do this? I know leaders aren't supposed to take credit for their successes, but this team is Eve Julian's team. She built the team's identity from the ground up through leadership development, inclusive practices, connective activities, and standards. She is an excellent leader and deserves to be celebrated, just like how she celebrates her people. There, these are her leadership principles, and now I want these to be my leadership principles as I take up leadership roles all throughout my life. Now let's hear Coach Eve's hope for her leaders.
I just hope that they learn something that they can take with them into their future careers. They can step in and lead. And I think that that is something that there are a lot of people who probably could but don't have the confidence for it. So, having gone through a season with the team, my hope is that you feel like, I can do this with other groups too. I can take what I've learned here and build another team of my own.
I would like to think that I lived up to this hope, at least in part. I am someone who sometimes struggles with the confidence to fully step into a leadership role. And even once I do, I can be hesitant to hold others to high standards or focus on long term progress. Much of my growth as a leader this season came from building relationships and fostering these connections. And I know that I still have a lot of work to do to become the kind of leader that I aspire to be. But overall, I am deeply grateful for everything Coach Eve has done for me. I am also deeply grateful for this class, Education 240. It has pushed me to step into leadership in ways that I hadn't before. It has challenged me to reflect and exposed me to a wide range of lessons from leaders of every kind. Even when I hesitated, even when I wasn't sure I could rise to the occasion, this class gave me the tools, the examples, and the space to grow. Looking back, I can see now how far I've come. From a nervous swimmer, unsure of his role on the team, to someone who can lead with energy, connection, and love for the people around him. The lessons from Coach Eve, from this team, and from this class are now part of me. They are not just ideas in a textbook. They are a compass I will carry into every team I join, every group I lead, and every challenge I face. Leadership, I've learned, is not about being the best or being in charge. It's about lifting others up, building culture, and leaving people better than you found them. And that is exactly what I intend to do, wherever life takes me. Thank you.